There are people in this world who, in the process of building something great, they look at all of the things that go wrong and they decide to themselves, oh my God, it must be a sign. God doesn't want this for me. And then they quit. And so I thought I would share with you some of the things that have happened in my business that should have made me quit, but they in fact did not, because it's all about perspective. This video is actually inspired by my friend Asia from Get Rich or Drunk Trying on Instagram. She did a swipey post on this, and I thought I would do it in the form of a video so that I could talk through it instead. Here are 6 instances where things could have gone way left, and I should have quit, but I did not, and I'm happy that I didn't because I am where I am today. So the first one is during one of my first webinars. I don't think it was my very, very first one, but during one of the first ones, the internet just went flat out. Like my Wi-Fi was gone. There was no more Wi-Fi. I'm in the middle of a webinar. I'm in the middle of teaching this masterclass. I'm training. I'm talking to the people. I think over 700 people had signed up for this particular masterclass. And right in the middle of it, my Wi-Fi just went out. And so I couldn't get back into the system. Thankfully, I had like a long cord. I had one of those Ethernet cables. So I just plugged my Ethernet cable into my laptop at the time and was able to get back on the internet because the internet was on, but the Wi-Fi just went out for no apparent reason. And I was able to finish my masterclass. A lot of the times when it comes to technology, people get very flustered. Like in those situations, if somebody's Wi-Fi went out or their computer dies, I mean, that happens to everybody. Everyone that I know, every person that I've ever worked with has had some sort of technological difficulty that seems so random and so crazy. Like, why is this even happening to me? Because there's no rhyme or reason for it to, other than to test me or tempt me. And how they choose to experience those moments says a lot about a person, because you can be panicked, you can be frustrated, you can throw your hands up in the air and be like, never mind, I'm not doing it. A lot of people would move into the extremes to be like, oh my gosh, there are forces against me. It must mean that God does not want me to accomplish the things that I'm supposed to accomplish or the things that I desire on this planet. I mean, our minds can conjure up some really interesting things in those moments because we're super creative. Or you can choose to laugh about it, which is exactly what I did. I just laughed. I was like, of course the Wi-Fi is going to go out in the middle of this. Of course there's going to be something that's going to stop me from doing what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not going to let it. Not today, Satan. I'm going to win this battle. So I just figured it out. And most people who venture into the space of figuring it out actually are able to figure it out and they come out on top. So that was one instance for me. And that was the very, very beginning of my business. I'm talking like 2016, like February of 2016, which is when I started my business. This happened. And there have been other instances, over the last several years where other things like that have happened. I just don't let them get to me. So if something like that has happened to you, just let it slide. Laugh about it. Know that it's not the end of the world. Most of us are not out here solving cancer. This is not life or death. So you either need to reschedule your webinar or you plug in your internet and get back on, which is exactly what I did, or cancel it altogether. Either way, it's not the end of the world. There is a solution. You just have to be open enough to finding it. The second thing that happened was I was launching my biggest program to date. So this is 2017. Even until now, this is my flagship program. It is my 7-month mentorship program. It's called Platform. Hundreds and hundreds of people have gone through it by this point. But when this happened in 2017, 0 people. Like I had 0 people. And this biggest launch of my life that I had poured my heart and soul into was interrupted by a hurricane. I live in Miami. Hurricanes are not as popular as you would think. Like there's not a lot of hurricanes that come, but this particular year, Hurricane Irma decided to rear her very ugly head and interrupted my launch completely. I'm literally in Home Depot. Like I'm having conversations with potential clients in the middle of Home Depot while I'm trying to get supplies for the hurricane. So the program was supposed to start, I don't remember the actual day, let's say it was September 15th, but the hurricane took out all of the comms. Like there was no electricity, there was no internet, there was no cell service. My friends and I were joking that we were sending ravens back and forth to each other.
You send the ravens.
Because there was nothing that was available to us. So I couldn't actually start my program on that day. I had to push it out a week. Thankfully, everybody understood. Everybody, was like, oh, no problem, like stay safe. Everybody that had signed up for the program, they were completely gracious about it. But sometimes in our minds, we can take those things very personal. Like it's this universal attack, like the universe is now attacking us for having a desire. And it has flipped itself upside down to bring a hurricane into our experience so we cannot achieve the things that we are meant to achieve. And that's just simply not true. true. It was a hurricane. Many people were affected by it. Obviously, it was completely outside of my control. Of course, like I said, you can switch your mind into thinking that it must be a sign that you're not supposed to do it. But instead of that, I just looked at it as an isolated incident. It's not like hurricanes were happening every single day or natural disasters were occurring on a regular basis in my life. It just happened to be on this particular day, in this time frame, in this season, because it was in fact hurricane season. And that's what I get for trying to launch in the middle of hurricane season. But it was no big deal. Everybody was perfectly fine with it. I just had a mindset that I really did feel bad because people had invested. They had paid their deposits. They were ready to rock and roll. But I physically could not show up because I had no way to do so. I didn't have cell service, no data, no nothing. Thankfully, everybody felt good about it and we were able to move on, and it was an amazing class. The 7 months that proceeded after that were awesome, and I've been running Platform ever since then. Well, I've taken a little bit of a break, but if you're interested in signing up for Platform, the next time it launches, which will probably be sometime in 2025, I will put a link down below for you to sign up for the waitlist. There have been 6 cycles so far, so I'm excited to launch a new one. I've taken a break from it for a while, but it's coming back. The next 2 are linked. I've talked about them multiple times with clients. I'm still a little bit salty about it, if I'm honest, but we're working through it. I once paid $18,000 cash upfront for a coaching program that made me work more and make less. Here's the thing. I went into this coaching program with high hopes. Like, I was very optimistic. I thought it was going to be great. I thought it was going to work. I thought it was kind of like the next thing that I needed that was going to elevate me to wherever it was I was trying to get to at the time. It did not do that. And instead of trusting myself and going, oh, it really didn't do that, I should pivot and do a different strategy, I doubled down. Actually, I tripled, quadrupled down on this and paid another $50,000 to participate in a higher level mastermind with the same coach, only for that to be one of the worst business investments that I've ever made. And that was $50,000 upfront cash. So $18,000 first, another $50,000 just to double down on the mistake that we made. Looking back on it, I did learn a lot of lessons. I learned what not to do. And I always say that. It just was not a system that worked for me. I'm sure that it works for somebody somewhere. I mean, it worked for them, or it worked for the people that were participating in it. Most of them, I think, but it just was not something that I felt like was in alignment with how I wanted to show up for my clients and what I wanted to do. But instead of trusting myself and trusting my gut, I decided to trust somebody external. And that was the mistake. It wasn't the investment of the $18,000 and then another investment of the $50,000 on top of that. As a matter of fact, like, that, in my opinion, is a cheap price to pay for all of the lessons that I learned. I would much rather have learned the lessons by paying that little bit than waiting until the investment was significantly higher. Like if I was paying $500,000 to invest in something and then get burned on the other side of that. The biggest lesson that I learned from that is trusting myself. Like, I know how to run my business. I know what God has called me to. I know what feels good and what feels aligned, and I need to trust that. And I wasn't in that season. So, cheap lesson to learn. Glad I learned it. Will not be making that mistake again. At least I hope not. A lot of people make these investments that don't pan out, and they assign meaning to the outcome. Like, oh, well, because I didn't make $75 million overnight, it must be the wrong investment. Or, oh, because my business didn't blow up and I didn't get 1 million followers on social media in 2 weeks, it must mean that I'm not supposed to do it. And that's not how it works. Sometimes you have to look at the bigger lesson that is available to you, not the minuteness of money, because money is a renewable resource. You can always make more money. Some of these lessons you would never learn if you didn't invest the money in the first place. So that's how I look at that. Sometimes investments give me the return that I'm looking for. Sometimes the return is not monetary. Sometimes the return is in the form of learning what not to do so that I don't do it ever again. Something else that's happened multiple times is that Meta has disabled my ads account on multiple occasions. Usually it's something minor, like the card that's on file is expired, or my credit card doesn't recognize the charge, so I need to, do whatever fraud alerts that are attached to that. But there have definitely been times, well, I would say this, the first time that it happened, I definitely freaked out. I was like, oh my God, because I was in the middle of a launch. And in the middle of a launch, when you're running thousands and thousands of dollars of Facebook ads and you're relying on those Facebook ads to, give you the visibility that you need so that you can launch a product or a program in the right way, having your Meta ads disabled in the middle of such a big launch doesn't feel good. I could have taken that and said, oh my gosh, it must mean that I'm not supposed to launch it, or it must mean that nobody likes me, or God is blocking me at every turn. God is not the enemy, right? He is not the mountain that we must move. But sometimes that's how we look at it, when really that was not the case. It was a simple case of a misunderstanding between Meta and I had to contact Meta and say, hey, Meta, you actually made a mistake by disabling this ad account, because what you said I didn't actually do. And it was a simple conversation that we had. And then they re-enabled the ad account and it was fine. But before all that happened, I had already predetermined in my mind that Facebook ads is not the end all be all of my launch. It's not the end all be all of how I'm able to connect with people, how I'm able to attract people into my business, how I'm able to teach people, educate them, train them, give them the things that they need, serve them. There are so many other ways that I could do that. And so I brainstormed, I think, at this time with my coach, we brainstormed like 10 other ways that we could make sure that the launch went off without a hitch, even if we didn't have Meta ads. And so I felt a lot better about switching my mindset from thinking that one thing was going to determine my whole life story, because that was simply not the case. And then after that, Meta re-enabled it. So all was well, but I definitely had to reassess. I had to come back to my sender and recognize that, the gods of Facebook do not determine how successful I get to become. This is probably one of the biggest ones of all. I laugh about it now because I think it's hilarious. But at the time, I'm crying. I'm at the table. I'm like with my pastors crying, like just, what is this? But in the beginning of my business, somebody had made a YouTube video on the coaching industry and how webinars were a scam and this, that, and a third, but they happened to use me as an example of it. And, as somebody who, I like to think that I'm a person of integrity, and the last thing I would ever want to do is scam somebody, because really, I want to give things that are going to benefit them, whether they work with me or not, whether they pay for my class, course, or sign up to a program. It doesn't matter. Like, I make content, whether it's in the form of a webinar or a YouTube video or Instagram or whatever. Like, I make content so that people can get the help that they need in order to launch the businesses that they have always dreamt of launching. So because that has always been my heart and what I desire for people to experience, because I've been there. I've been in a place where you have these big dreams, big desires, and have no idea how to accomplish them. You don't know who to go to. You don't know who to ask questions with. You don't know how to discuss it. You don't even know where to begin, right? I've been there personally. And so when I was starting my business, one of the reasons why I started it to begin with is to help people who were in that space, because I was able to overcome a lot of that. I was able to learn things, and I wanted to teach the things that I learned so that I could help other people. So when this video was created by this other creator, and she was huge, by the way, I don't actually know if she still makes content now. I don't know where she is now, but she was huge at the time. Like, she had significantly more followers than me. Like, I'm talking like hundreds of thousands of followers more than me, I believe. So I was, as a creator, even as a YouTuber, I was still kind of small scale. As a coach, I was just getting started. So this person, in terms of what her reputation was on the internet, and it was just vastly different than mine. So when she made this video, and it was about the industry as a whole, but I was used as an example, not by name, but multiple people knew that it was me, because multiple people that were in my circle followed this person. So when she made the video, it just felt very much like a personal attack to my character, because everybody that knows me in real life knows that that is the farthest from who I am. But because, like I said, I was new. I hadn't built up the confidence yet. I hadn't built up enough evidence, historical data to prove her wrong to myself. It was less about proving that wrong to her, because she had nothing to do with the decisions that I was making or the destiny that God had for me or what God had called me to do. It was really about proving it to myself. And so it was hurtful, because I did start to question myself, and I started to go, well, is this a scam? Am I scamming people? And thank God I have people in my life who will speak life into me and remind me that that's not who I am at all. And out of that, that's when I met my life coach and started working with him. And I really started to solidify my identity as a coach, because I hadn't really risen to that at the level of identity yet. Like I said, I was still very new in the industry, so I wasn't sure what I was capable of doing. So working on my identity, working on the truth of who I was, working on my core beliefs and my true desires for the world was very helpful, so that if or when that happened again, it wouldn't shake me as such. But if that happened to most people, I can venture to say it takes people out. Like when your reputation is questioned and, the integrity of who you are becomes a point of conversation, one can want to hide. And I did, but I recognized that hiding wasn't actually helpful. Like hiding would have proven that person right. Hiding would have given more fodder to a dialogue around, is this real? Am I so I focused on service. I focused on how can I serve more? How can I give more? How can I, and it was less about proving it to other people. It was about proving it to myself because I know who I am. I know what I'm called to do. And so that's really where I focused. But now, like I said, I laugh about it. It's hilarious. I wish the person well. There's no ill will in that story at all. Like, I don't have anything against that person. Like, on the outside looking in, I can see how one can come to that conclusion if you are a person who is generally skeptical, or if you've been scammed before or burned before, how one can think that. But I know who I am. I know that that's not what I do. I am so thankful that I get a chance to work with the people that I work with, and I get to change lives in the way that I get to change lives and change families and change legacy, both in the content that I deliver, the education, the things that they're learning, in what I'm able to create, but also in the work that I get to do when I work with them. So that feels really good. I know what God's called me to do. None of that is in question. So I did not quit, all that to say. All right, the moral of the story is that as an entrepreneur, there are many ups and downs that you will experience, not because you have to experience ups and downs, but usually the ups and downs are where we learn the biggest lessons. So as we make these mistakes or as we encounter these unfavorable circumstances, we get to make a different choice. We get to choose how we're going to experience it. And the choice of how you decide to move through those experiences often determines who you become on the other side of it. And a $50,000 mistake is much better than a $500,000 mistake. A hurricane comes, you postpone something. The internet dies, you tell them that you're going to reschedule it. These are really no big deal in the grand scheme of eternity. None of those things are signs from God that you're doing something wrong. None of them are punishments. None of those things are, you should stop what you're doing because you're moving down the wrong path. If anything, those circumstances really do reveal to me who I am and what I'm capable of and what I'm made of. I'm not going to quit if something doesn't go my way. I'm probably going to figure out a way to fight through it. It also reminds me that God gets to show up for me in those moments. Like when I am weak, he gets to be strong, right? When I don't know what to do, he does. God's grace fills in the gaps always. And if I had $1 for every time that has happened in my business, I'd have made millions. Actually, I have made millions. So, and you can too, but not if you're always looking for signs that God is somehow against your dreams. He wouldn't have given them to you if they're not meant for you to steward. Anyway, I hope that you found some sort of solace or camaraderie in that video, knowing that when things go wrong, you are not alone. I've experienced them too. It's just how you choose to move through them. I'll see you next time.